All right, welcome back, Powers on Sports podcast. We are back. It is time for the coach and the kicker once again. My buddy Anthony Blevins, former NFL assistant coach in multiple years in the league. He is a great asset for us, and he's been doing a great job for us throughout the football season. We got a lot of stuff going on. Trade deadline just passed. College football rankings. Had another coach let go. And Anthony's going to be able to give us some great perspective on all those topics and more. So welcome back, Anthony.
Hey, it's good to be back. Appreciate it.
Yeah, our Blazers. I know you told me you were in Birmingham over the week. Our Blazers finally get off the snide after a long losing streak. Trent Dilfer, nice big win there. I don't know if it was homecoming, but a buddy of ours, Izell Reese, former NFL player, guy we played with, got inducted into the UAB Hall of Fame. I know you got to go back and visit some guys.
Yeah, that was fun. It's the first time I've been back. First time I've been in the new stadium ever, and the first time I've been back since 2014. So it was good to see a bunch of guys, reconnect with a bunch of friends. And actually, it was homecoming. So just being in Birmingham, my hometown, so a lot of people just locally that may not have been affiliated with UAB,
Yep.
but it was just good to be back, and it was good to see the Blazers. Cam Shanks had a great game, National Player of the Week. 311 all-purpose yards. Quarterback Jalen Kitna had 400 yards, 6 passing touchdowns. So it was a fun game for the Blazers. I think it was a 59-21 win.
Yep.
So it was good for them. They needed that.
They did. They did. Trent's been struggling there, but hopefully, maybe seems like they found a quarterback in Kitna, the son of John Kitna, who's a former Florida Gator kid. Sounds like he's done pretty well in the last 2-3 weeks that he's played. So hopefully that program is back on the uptick a little bit. All right, let's talk about coach. We mentioned coaches. Dennis Allen let go in New Orleans this week. They had started out what a start they had. First 2 weeks of the year they were scoring
Yeah.
45 points a game. We all thought, uh-oh, look out here. They lose 7 games in a row. How does it go from so good after 2 weeks to then so bad 6-7 weeks later?
Well, I think early in the season, because you talk about preseason, you don't play those guys in preseason, so you're still figuring out what you have early in the season. So it starts off good. You go, 2-0. You beat Dallas. You come here and beat Dallas. I mean, just absolutely spank Dallas. And then you kind of start figuring out who you are. Injuries start hitting you. Adversity hits you. You lose Derek Carr for about 3 weeks. And then next thing you know, you're in a 7-game losing streak. I mean, it's really tough, and it's really hard to kind of spin yourself out of those losing streaks. I've been in the league. We lost 9 straight one time. And you talk about tough. You talk about how hard it is to get up in the building on a Monday morning after you lost. And all of these losses have been, for the most part, been pretty close. They lost to a bad Carolina team, 23-22 over the
Right.
weekend. And those type of losses, when they start stacking up, on in a coach where he's in the last year of his
You
contract,
got an older team, a lot of older guys on that team.
lot of older guys, and it's just like, you know what, let's make a change. They traded Marshawn Lattimore
Yep.
yesterday, right at the deadline, and so made a move there. Now they're starting to try to acquire pieces and start trying to build for the future. And then
Salary cap problems, lot big salary cap problems moving forward. They've been kicking the can down the road for a bunch of years.
yeah, and it just hasn't worked out for him. And Dennis Allen came into the season on the hot seat
Right.
and started off hot, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this is the time they turn the page, they can kind of get things going, but they come back to being the Saints that they've always been.
Talk about Darren Rizzo, the special teams coach, is now the interim coach there. Give the audience a sense of the obviously it's a change of responsibility, but really the massive change that any coach would go from being a coordinator, assistant coach to now being elevated to an interim coach. How do you change your mindset as a coach, having to come up with talks to the team, things like that? Maybe you change the practice schedule a little bit, how things have been going. Talk about some of those things that you have to think about as an assistant if you ever get that opportunity.
Yeah, I think for a special teams coordinator, it's probably easier from that perspective as opposed to an offensive defensive coordinator. Special teams coordinator is the only coach that talks to the entire team other than the head coach. So he's used to presenting to the entire team. He's used to presenting to the offense, presenting to the defense. So that won't be an issue. The issue will come up in the responsibility. He's a special teams coordinator. So now what do I relinquish to my assistant and be able to maintain some of it and
Yep.
then being able to call the game and manage the game, calling timeouts. We're going to go for it on fourth down. We're going to
Challenges.
punt here, challenges, all those things. Those are the things that'll come up that'll be different for him. But Rizzi's a veteran coach. He's been around this game for a long time. And so I think he'll be fine. Does the record change? I don't know if the record
Right.
changes, but I do think it'll give him a little bit of a spark. How much of a difference it'll make, I really don't know.
Talk about just the stuff that when you guys are in game, how many guys at any one time are talking to each other on the radios? I mean, or on the headsets. If you're the offensive staff, are you talking to all? Do you have access to all the offensive assistants? Or are you just talking to the core? Give us a little sense of on the headphones, a head coach. Who's he talking to? How many people have access to talk to him? Things like that.
Well, the head coach has a switch where he can toggle over to offense, defense, and special teams. So defense is on one line, offense is on another line, special teams are on another line. Head coach has the responsibility or the ability to toggle between all three phases. And typically the coordinators can toggle over and get to the head coach. So that part of it won't be an issue for the most part. I don't
Right.
think that'll be an issue. But typically between offense and defense, it's usually just the coordinators that have access to the
To the
head
head
coach.
coach.
Yeah, and the head coach can come over, and the head coach he can hear all of the defensive coaches, or the
Yeah.
defensive coaches can hear him. And same with offense, same with special teams. So,
Is it pretty much the protocol as an assistant coach? Kind of don't say anything on the headset unless you're asked about something. Is that kind of the protocol, or do you guys use timeouts or TV timeouts to interject with your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator, whichever side of the ball you're working?
no, typically there's free form communication. I mean, you're on defense, and there's things that the coordinator needs. Down and distance, what yard line, what hash, in order to make his call. So there's free flowing communication. Like during the play, hey, they've been 11 personnel
Right.
5 times in a row right here. They've been in doubles formation 5 times in a row. Doubles formation has been 100% pass. So there's free flowing communication between the coordinators and the assistants. So that's never been an issue. Now, what happens is when you have multiple people talking, it can get a little bit cloudy on the headsets. Hey, one person at a time. I can't take all this information in.
Right.
I can't hear you. It gets muffled. So usually it's one person talking at a time, but there's free flowing communication.
Very good. Very good. All right, let's go to Las Vegas. They don't fire the coach, but the coach fires the OC, the quarterback coach, the O line coach, which is the gutting basically the offensive staff for the most part. I would imagine those three guys were tied in together when they were hired, so I imagine that's why they all got let go together. I would guess, but who knows? Talk about again. It sounds like the Raiders are bringing in Norv Turner as a consultant, or he may be an assistant coach full time. We don't know yet fully. Just talk about an in-season move of a offensive staff, but not the head coach.
Well, I think that's hard because now you're bringing in a new coordinator, new philosophy. Now, from what I've understood, that Scott Turner is going to take over and be the primary play caller. So he's been there on staff.
Which is
So,
Norv Turner's son.
which is Norv Turner's son, and bring in Norv as a consultant. So, how much of it will change from philosophy? I don't know if you can go and put in a whole new offense. The Raiders will have a bye week coming up, so there'll be some wrinkles, some different things. But I don't think they're good enough at the quarterback position to begin with. Gardner Minshew, Adrian O'Connell. They just signed Desmond Ritter.
Right.
I just don't think they're good enough at the quarterback position to really make a move. But far as the coaches, the players are resilient. They'll come in, they'll fight, but it is hard to make a wholesale change like that. And be honest with you, I thought Luke Gessie was a bad hire to begin with.
Right.
He had the worst offense in Chicago the last 2 years.
Right.
So, Justin Fields, talented quarterback. I mean, you see what he did in Pittsburgh early in the season.
Yep.
So to come into a new situation where they're already lacking at the quarterback position, to think he's going to make that big of a difference, I didn't like that hire to begin with.
And just talk about the interaction that a head coach has to have with the owner to do that. I mean, that's obviously the owner has to a-okay that and sign off on that. How you may just talk about those kind of conversations that have to happen between the head coach, the GM, and the owner to be able to say in week 9 we're gutting the offensive staff here.
Well, I mean, that has to be an organizational decision. It doesn't just happen because the head coach wants to do it. And he gets emotionally hot and just says, bam, I'm done. No,
Yeah.
those decisions have to be done up top and then come down, because you got contracts involved,
Right.
money, and the rate. From what I understand, the Raiders are a cash-strapped organization,
Right.
so all of that had to start. May have started with AP, with the head coach, then went to the general manager. General manager took it to Mark Davis, and then Mark Davis okayed it. And it could have been a decision where it's been in the talk in works for a couple of weeks,
Right.
and it's like, okay, let's give them a chance. Let's see if we can get it going. And then all of a sudden, they don't perform well against Cincinnati this weekend. It's like enough's enough. We're going into the bye week. This is the time to make a change if we're going to make a change.
What's interesting, and you've mentioned this before, the teams that continuously just run the hamster wheel, whether it's coaches, whether it's philosophy, it's just amazing how winning teams don't do this kind of stuff. Teams like the Steelers, the consistency of the Steelers organization, coaches, just philosophy, and just how some of these other teams in the league just continue. I mean, how many coaches are the Raiders paying? Gruden, McDaniels. I mean, who? I mean, it's just incredible how some of these organizations just continually get it wrong.
Yeah, and I got a lot of respect for Pittsburgh. They've had three coaches over the course of, I don't know, 40,
55
50 years.
years, 60
Yeah,
years,
I mean, three coaches. That's amazing. So whatever their process is, if I'm an owner, I'm trying to talk to Art Rooney. What are you looking for in a head coach? Because
right?
you've picked them right over the last, or that organization has picked them right over the last 50 years. So I mean, you had Chuck Noll, you
Cower,
had Cowher, and now you got Mike Tomlin. Like all of them have been there. Mike Tomlin, I think this is what, year 17, 18, something for Mike Tomlin. Never had a losing season. I mean, it's been amazing the run of coaches that Pittsburgh has had over that course of time.
and it's a team like Pittsburgh. They've even with Cower, they endured some up and down years. They had some poor years, multiple
Mm-hmm.
poor years with Cower, but they understood the consistency and the mentality of what he brings. Is and coaches can only do so much. The players ultimately got to play and make plays. Sometimes you're going to have a year where that just doesn't happen, and you're going to have a bad record. That doesn't mean the coaching's bad. It just means injuries, bad luck, whatever creates a bad year, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's all, sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good. There's a saying that we say. But when you have that run, is how can you overcome it? Pittsburgh started off, I think last year or 2 years ago, they started off like 0-4 and still ended up making the playoffs, still had a winning season. But that's the resolve that you have to have. You can't just be emotionally hot and just say, you know what, we're gonna get rid of this coach, we're gonna get rid of this player. Stay the course and build something. When you look at old school, and it's hard now because of the internet and the pressure to win now. But Bobby Bowden, I think it was 6 years before he won a season at Florida State.
Right.
Frank Beamer, before it became Beamer Ball at Virginia Tech,
Yep.
it took him about 7 years before he had a winning season. So if you can stay the course, which is hard to do now because there's so much money involved, there's so much instant access to everything. But if you can stay the course, that's a good formula for winning.
Talk about how challenging it is, and we're at the halfway point of the season virtually for every team in the league. Talk about how challenging it is to keep the spirit of the team. Let's say you're in a little bit of a losing streak. Let's say you've lost 3 out of 4. Let's say had a good start, but maybe you're struggling now, or the other way. You started off slow, now you're playing well. You're in that middle of the road. You're in the playoff hunt. You're right on the board. Talk about how hard it is to keep the spirit of the team up when maybe things haven't been going well for a 2 or 3 week run, things like that. Or you're a team like New Orleans where it's gone downhill. You lost 7 in a row. Just talk about the different dynamics of just trying to keep the positivity in the building.
Well, if you're in New Orleans where you've lost 7 in a row, or teams like that, you start talking about, guys, we're playing for pride, we're playing for contracts, all of us playing for our jobs. And I think there's a realistic sense of, guys, we are playing for our jobs. They just fired our head coach.
Right.
So we're all playing for our jobs, whether you're an assistant, whether you're, a coordinator, whether you're a player, like we're all playing for
Front
something.
office person, how they're
Front
scouting
office,
players.
because like when the head coach, typically how it rolls, okay, they let the head coach go, let coaches go. All right. Then they bring in a new GM, new head coach. Then guess what? Then it starts to roll down to the players, So nobody's absolved from any of this. Everybody's got blood on their hands. Now it's a lot easier when you're on a team where you might be, you know, 5-3 at this point, and you just lost a game or lost 2 games in a row.
A
It's a
team
little
like the
bit,
Bengals or the Jets that they think they're good enough to be in it, but they
yeah.
haven't quite put it all together yet to get in it. Just talk about that mentality of stay in the course.
Well, I think the Bengals are a prime example. They've started off 0-2, 0-3 the last couple of years, and they're still starting off slow. But right now, they fought their way back into it. I think they're 4-5 at this point. Had a big win over the weekend, and they're playing pretty good football. Has it always worked out for them? No, it hadn't always worked out for them. But they're getting healthy. Their D line's getting healthy. They're playing a little bit better on defense. So the Bengals are a prime example of you just fight. You just fight. You just play every game and you take it one game at a time. Baltimore is another example of
Huge
it.
game Thursday night at Baltimore. They're
Oh,
playing this
Baltimore.
Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be a just a slugfest. I mean, it's gonna be back
Yeah.
and forth. I'm really looking forward to that. But let's say Baltimore as an example. They started 0-2, then they went on a run. I think they lost
Yep.
one in that run,
Yep.
but they went on about a 4 or 5 game run.
Cleveland beat them two
Like,
weeks ago with Jameis. Yep.
yeah,
Upset them.
yeah, and that's the only game they've lost since they started 0-2. So
Right.
but you just stay the course, and the goal is to go 1-0 each week. Not gonna ask you to do a whole lot. Just go 1-0. Just win this game this week. That's the only one that matters. We can't do anything about next week. Can't do anything about the game that just passed. Let's just focus on this week, and then you just try to narrow the focus, and that's really it. Regardless of what situation you're in, you just narrow the focus and focus on what's in front of you, what's right now, and you go forward.
And how easy is it to keep the guys dialed in when you're playing well? Details, from a coaching perspective, just continuously reinforcing the fundamentals. When your team is playing well, the team is seeing the results on the field. They see the fruits of their labor. When I do these things well, we win. We play well. Talk about that.
That's the easiest, because everybody's having fun. Everybody loves to win. So that's the easiest part of it when they're dialed in.
Team like Detroit right now.
Detroit is hot. I mean, they're playing great football, playing really physical football. I love what Detroit is doing. Like, I absolutely love it. They play football the right way. So it's got to be fun coming in there on Monday after they beat Green Bay, after they put 47 on Dallas. I mean,
Yeah.
those moments have got to be fun. You just got to make sure the only deal is you got to make sure you don't get too overconfident and start overlooking things. That's the only deal. And you hear Bill Parcells, Sean Payton. It's like when things are going well, you find a way to create crisis to dial them back in. And you hear Sean Payton talk about New Orleans when they went to the Super Bowl, how maybe some guys staying out a little late. So he made a crisis to dial it back in so you could focus in for the rest of the week and go win the Super Bowl. So you hear about stories like that, but it's really it's really good. I think when you're on top and you can maintain that level of competitiveness and that edge.
For a guy that's coached DBs, talk about, and just any position, talk about the trade deadline. You get a bunch of deals yesterday, bunch of new guys coming to a new system. What's your approach when it's your position, Marshawn Lattimore, for example, DBs? How do you get him up to speed in a timely manner where he can play Sunday and play fast and play well?
Well, a lot of times what I've done or what I've seen done is you have an onboarding process, just like any job, it's on the job training. So you may have videos that you recorded of previous installs, previous meetings, and you can upload those to a guy's iPad so he can go at home, watch them at home. But then you're spending extra time in the morning before the day starts, and then extra time at night after the day ends, trying to get this guy up to speed. Now it'll be a little bit easier because you got a week to game plan, and you'll take this week game plan, give him all the basics, and then he'll probably play some, probably be on a pitch count, and have a certain package, and then as that next week, the week after, then you can get him caught up to speed on everything. And for the player, I mean, Marshawn's played a bunch of football, probably been in a bunch of systems.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that'll carry over that he'll know just
And there's only
automatically.
so many coverages you guys run. I mean, there's only so many things you guys are doing, right?
Yeah,
Especially at corner.
from a corner perspective, I mean, it's cover three, cover two, quarters. Man, I mean, that's really it. And
Right.
then when you get to the third down stuff will tie in, and that's all game plan stuff. So that's the stuff you'll get during the week that'll be new, and it's new for everybody, not just him. It'll be new for everybody.
Let's go to Monday night, Kansas City. Bucks hanging in there. They play a great football game. They're in the rain, down 7. They drive 75 yards, score a touchdown with 30 seconds to go, and they're down 1.
Right.
Do you go for 2 there? What's the thought? What's the thought process here? I mean, you've had the whole drive. If you're Todd Bowles, he's a defense. He's not calling the offensive plays. You've had the
Right.
whole drive to think about it. You know what the situation is. Two-time world champions in their building. You know who you're playing on the other side of the field in 15. What's your thought process there?
Right there, I'm going for 2. On the road, Monday night, I'm going for 2. Patrick Mahomes on the other side. Now if it had been some other quarterback, maybe he kick the field goal and go to
Right.
overtime. But Patrick Mahomes, like we've seen him do it over and over and over again. Like, don't give him the ball, don't give him a chance to beat you. And it probably, if Tampa wins the toss in overtime, we're probably not even having this discussion. Probably because Baker
You
was hot at that point. And so I'm gonna ride with Baker, but I'm gonna go for 2 in that situation.
and you saw Baker's reaction when he didn't win the coin toss in
Yeah,
overtime.
yeah. Because Kansas City, I mean, they struggled in the third quarter and they played really good in the fourth quarter, moved the ball up and down the field in the fourth quarter. And so Kansas City's offense was hot. So based off the way the game was going, I would have definitely went for 2 at that point.
And what shocked me about it more that I mean, you can make an argument kicking the extra point, not going for the Bucks had already been on the field for 73 plays on defense before overtime started. It was
Right.
rainy and wet, which makes it heavier. You get more
Mhm.
fatigued in the rain. I mean, just and the Bucks had the momentum of they just went 75 yards, had all the momentum and scored. I was just shocked. And the other part of this is looking at the schedule. You're playing on Monday night. You have to then turn around and play Sunday. So the
Right.
rest time and recovery's less. You go to overtime, that's more wear and tear. I just could not believe. And the last thing I'll say is, and you can attest to this, nobody in that locker room would have said a word if they went for 2 and didn't make it and lost, as opposed to now there's doubt of, man, our coach didn't have the confidence in us to win the game, going for 2 to win on the road. Talk about
Right.
that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the confidence part of it is huge. And I think it does show, okay, we believe, like we go and win this thing. Like I think it could be a real momentum builder because San Francisco is not the San Francisco of last year or 2 years ago. They're struggling, they've got injuries, they're trying to get Christian McCaffrey back. So this game could be a momentum build for us. And then you're 2 games back or 3 games back, technically now
Right.
of Atlanta.
Right.
So it gives you a chance to stay pace. But I just really think like they should have went for 2. And hindsight's 2020. We can
Yeah, I
sit
mean, you
here
can, yeah,
and go
but
back and forth with
what
it. But I do believe that they should have went for 2 and tried to win the game there. Oh,
and again, I would back to our conversation about on the headsets. We'll never know, but you wonder what the chatter was on the headsets as the drive is unfolding and they get to the inside the 10-yard line of what was being discussed of, hey, do we do this? Do we not? I don't know if there's an analytics person on the line, probably talking, giving information. Yeah, I just would be curious to know what happens on the headset on that kind of drive.
yeah, typically there's analytics going on. Hey, well, in that situation, there probably is no analytics because it was do or die. You got to score here to at least have a chance to win the game. So, in that situation, offensive coordinator knows this is 4 down
No, I'm
territory.
talking about going whether you go for 2 or not, whether you kick
Oh,
the extra point or go for 2.
yeah, it could have been some analytics, but the one thing that I think back to was they got the ball at first and goal from the 1. Todd calls timeout.
He did.
I think right there that may have played some part in it, but like I would have let the clock run,
Yes.
and
If you're going to
you
call
know
timeout, call it with like 18 seconds where you have 4 downs to score, and KC cannot do anything if you do score.
correct, and so that's what that was. I was sitting here watching the Cowboys like,
Right.
don't call timeout, don't call the
Right.
timeout.
Right.
Because it was like 33 seconds left on the clock. You
Right.
got enough time to get up, run a play,
Even get off the
and take
pile.
a
You
shot.
could run the ball right there and still have plenty of time if you needed to.
Yeah, yeah, because once you call a timeout, like you knew that they were going to throw the ball because you can't take the chance of running it, not getting back up to the line of scrimmage and not
Right.
getting another snap off. So that kind of took them out of the 2 down or 2-way goal at the goal line.
Correct. Correct. All right, let's go to the other play scenarios. I want to get your thought on college football. Again, you're listening to Anthony Blevins, former NFL coach, coaching the kicker segment here. We're going all through the NFL, college football. We're going to get to the college football playoff here in just a second. Let's go to Penn State, Ohio State. First and goal at the 2 for Penn State. You got 4 downs to get it in. You can't kick a field goal. You got to score a touchdown. How do you run the ball 3 straight times right up the gut? Don't give it to your guy who's your Tim Tebow-esque guy, the tight end, the big tight end for Ohio State or for Penn State.
For
That's a
Penn
really
State.
good player, former quarterback. He's kind of their goal line guy. I was stunned. They don't put the ball in his hands at least once, if not twice. And 2, you run the ball 3 straight times up the gut. No RPO action, no any kind of misdirection, anything. Just your thought there, Penn State, Ohio State.
I'll be honest with you, I did not like it. I'm like you. Give
Nor did
do what
anybody
you've
else,
done all year.
coach.
Yeah, do what you've done all year. Give it to your guy down on the goal line and let him do what he does. I did not like it. That's I mean, it's typical Penn State, Ohio State. It's almost like when Ohio State comes to Happy Valley or just that game in general, wherever it's at, like it's just too big for Penn State right now. They've lost what 5, 6 straight, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable because honestly, I believe Penn State might be the better team overall. I really do. But when the chips are down, Penn State cannot get it done. They haven't gotten it done. And the big games and the big moments in the Big Ten conference, they have not gotten it done.
I'm shocked at just the play calling. I mean, again, you coach with a guy, Bruce Arians, that was just the no biscuit, no risk it, no biscuit mentality of the aggressiveness. If you're going to lose and you're not going to score on the goal line, be aggressive, do something, but you
Yeah,
run the ball up the gut first, second, and third down. That was the part that was just amazing to watch.
yeah, and I agree with you. You got to take a shot at the end zone. Like they've stuffed the run. Okay, you run it 2 times. All right,
Okay,
don't run it a third time. Like
right.
let's do something different. Like let's try to trick them. Let's try to fool them or something. But I did not like the play calling at all down there in that sequence.
Crazy, crazy to think that and James Franklin continues to struggle in these top 5, top 10 matchups at Penn State, and there's a cloud over that program, and whatever it is, I don't know what the mentality is when they see a big team on the schedule, but boy, that team at Coach Franklin has just not performed well. They've just never really played a great game in those kind of scenarios. For whatever reason, they play tight.
No, they'll play close, they'll play tough football, but they just can never get over the hump. Whether it's Michigan, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Iowa, and Iowa's probably the game that kind of goes back and forth a little
Right.
bit. But Michigan, Ohio State, they've just not shown up for those games. And I don't know, I'm like you, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's performance anxiety in those big games. They should make too much of a big deal of it. Don't make a big enough deal of it. But something's got to give because you cannot be in that conference and not win some of those big games.
No doubt. All right, let's go to the college football rankings. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami. Any surprises there with the order or who's left, who's not in that top 4?
No, not at all. I think they got it right now. Miami being undefeated, you can make an argument that Miami could be a little bit higher, but then you say, well, who have they really played?
Right.
So you kind of get in that argument. But I think 1 through 4 is probably pretty good right now, and the rest of it'll play out as it goes along. I mean, those top 4 they still get a bye from that first week, so I'm good with it the way it is right now.
You excited about a team like BYU, Indiana's in the mix, those kind of Boise State's in the mix here. Talk about
Yeah.
the those kind of teams that aren't used to being this highly touted this late in the year.
Well, I think it's good. I like the 12-team playoff because it does give a Boise State a chance to get in, Indiana, who actually Indiana's really playing really good, and
Yes.
that's where I would argue that should be a little bit higher. To be honest with you, they've really done well, and I don't know if they played a close game. They've beaten everybody by 2 scores or more,
Yes.
so they've been impressive to watch. I've only seen them one time. They played Washington on
Yep.
national TV 2 weeks ago. Beat them by like 2 scores, 14 points or something like that. But yeah, I think it's really good for college football. I think fans are really going to love it once they get into it, and you get a chance to see Boise State, who has a Heisman hopeful at running back. You don't get a chance to see Boise play that often. So Boise had a good run. years ago, Chris Peterson was
Yes.
there, beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. So, they're a known program, but this can take their program to a whole nother level being in the college football playoffs.
Let's get to a couple of elimination games at the college level. You got two monster SEC elimination games for some teams. You got LSU and Bama, which that series you know really well. Georgia, Ole Miss. Again, back to the coaching part of this. When you're in these locker rooms this week in all four of these programs, big moments here. How do you handle the pressure of the moment where the kids know what's going on, everybody knows what's at stake? How do you keep the focus where it needs to be as opposed to thinking ahead? Or how do you keep the anxiety where the anxiety doesn't set in? They play nervous and slow. How do you keep that balance?
Well, I think like for coaches, you'll hear them say it's just another week. Well, it's not just another
It
week,
ain't.
but you have to keep the focus narrow. You have to say the goal is to go 1-0. This is the process of how we go 1-0. We have to get back to the fundamentals of blocking, the tackling, and focus in on just the little things. And the little things, the process will carry us to where we want to go. Don't focus in on the results so much. Focus in on the process. How do we practice? How do we go about our meetings? Are we doing the things right in practice? And then we'll get the results if we do the right things and go through the process day by day by day. So I think they'll be fine. I'm looking forward to the Alabama LSU game. I mean, Death Valley at night. I mean, there's no
Yes.
better place in college football. And I think LSU gets a little bit of revenge this year. I think both teams are very similar, but I do think LSU comes up with a win. Alabama's won, I think, 11 out of the last 13 in that matchup. So I'm looking for LSU to get a little bit of revenge. Nick Saban is not there anymore.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how Alabama plays. I think Kellen DeBoer is a really good coach. I don't think it's his year this year because it's going to take him some time to build his culture and the way he wants to go about it. But the games they've lost, they've been on the road. They lost to Tennessee on the road, lost to Vandy on the road.
Yep.
I think this is another one you add to that.
Give me a quick thought about, and you've coached in both college and the NFL. Talk about the time difference versus college. College, there's a 20-hour rule limit in theory. In theory, wink,
In
wink.
theory.
About how much football the guys can be, organized activities and all that versus the NFL where it's a full day most every day. Just talk about how coaching wise, how that's a challenge to have to manage how much you install and new things and new tweaks because the kids have to go to school, they have other things. Talk about that difference.
Well, the one thing I know is kids can't do algebra and football all day. Something's going to give.
Right.
So you have to, build your package where it's very simple, but can be confusing for the offense. How do you do it? You start building it during spring ball. You carry it over through the summer. You carry it over through training camp. And then when you get to a game plan, you're only adding 2 or 3 new things a week. So you're not adding a whole new playbook. In the NFL, because it is a job. I mean, it's an 8 to 5 type of deal,
Yeah.
and it's your job to know what's going on. And guys will go home and study and do all that type stuff. Like I've been places where we've had a new playbook week after week, where it's hard on the coaches to learn it, it's hard on the players to learn it. I've been there, but it's your responsibility to learn it. But in those 20 hours, like there's not a lot of time because that's in that 20 hours, that's practice, that's meetings, that's travel time, game time. That's not a lot of time when you had
Right.
all of those things in for 20 hours a week. I mean, you're talking about a couple hours, just a couple hours a day,
Right.
maybe
And
three,
you're on the field
Monday,
practicing an
Tuesday,
hour and a
Wednesday.
half every day. I mean, just the practice time on the field is eating into that time.
Yeah, practice field, practice time, meeting time. So that's probably about between meeting time and practice time, at least 3 hours a day, at,
Yeah.
at least, and some of those numbers get kind of fuzzed a little bit in
No,
there.
no doubt. Again, people don't realize it is a completely different world in the NFL as far as time goes because you
Yeah,
got time to do walkthroughs, film, all the things you want to do as many times as you want to do it.
yeah. Once you get to the season, there's no limit of how long you can keep them in the building. Not during training camp, I think it's an 11-hour
Right.
day
In the
that
NFL,
that you
yeah.
can have during training camp, and in the NFL, yes. But once you get past training camp, there's no limit to how long they can stay in the building. I mean,
And
and you'll
especially
see
the
some
what? The
guys.
Monday through the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is a little slower for you guys, especially Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Well, yeah, typically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those are longer days. Friday's really short. Kind of you go to practice and you get out of there probably about 1, 2 o'clock. Saturday's really short. If it's a home game, come in the morning,
Yep.
you do a little walkthrough, have a quick meeting, do a little walkthrough. Then you come back in the evening, have quick meetings in the afternoon, and then that's it. But yeah, so that's kind of the schedule. Some guys will come in on Monday and want a game plan on Monday. So by the time, or I'm sorry, on Tuesday,
Right.
and then by the time they come in on Wednesday morning and you start meetings, they've already got some type of idea of what you're thinking, things like that. So,
Well, Coach Blevins, great job. And once again, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy the action this week. There'll be lots of great stuff in the NFL. Obviously, college football is really heating up with the month of November here. You're going to see a lot of elimination situation games and that kind of stuff with these teams. Keep up the great work. We'll talk soon, Coach. All right.
hey, sounds good. Look forward to it.